I will say good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, depending on your time zone. So welcome to the second conference, the second CCAPPTIA conference, which is the International Forum on the Climate Change Adaptation for Ports, Transport Infrastructure, and the Arctic. And so it was great to see all of you here. And of course, also too, is really great, especially to see some of you who were in the first conference a few years ago in Winnipeg. And so now you are here again. And again, for you and all of you, thank you very much for your support. And so for this second CCAPPTIA conferences, initially we tried to organize it online, but I think we can all understand that because of the pandemic, we have actually delayed it for a year, and finally this year we decided to go online. So hopefully, hopefully you will be able to enjoy this 3-day meeting online. But at the same time, hopefully on the third CCAPPTIA meeting, it will be a physical meeting again, so that we'll be able to interact with each other physically. So I think especially for those who is the first time joining this meeting, please allow me to spend just like 2 minutes to introduce a little bit about CCAPPTIA and the CCAPPTIA conference. So my name is Adolf, and I am one of the co-founding members of this CCAPPTIA, which is again is the International Forum on Climate Change Adaptation, Planning, Transportation, Infrastructure, and the Arctic. And so what we found is that transport infrastructures are increasingly affected by the impacts posed by hazards like the pandemic and the climate change. But because transportation is vital for trade and communication, the situation has significant implication for the local, national, global economy and human welfare. So we believe that the time has come for a paradigm shift on how transportation infrastructure and other supply chain components plan and enact new strategies. And so that is because of this, that is the objective of setting up CCAPPTIA in May 2019. And in fact, it was actually established at approximately 1 year after the first CCAPPTIA conference, which was held in Winnipeg in May 2018. And so in this conference, we are really honored to have invited approximately 30 speakers from both the academic sector, the policy makers, as well as from the professional practitioners, and of which these speakers come from Asia, North America, Europe, South America, as well as Africa. So we do have a very, very comprehensive team of speakers. And in this case, our theme, or the theme of this conference, is the adaptation and resilience of transport and logistics in the post-pandemic world. And I hope that you know, from throughout these 3 days, we all will be able to understand a little bit more about not just about sustainable transport and logistics, but also the fact that to try to understand in the world of challenges like nowadays, what are we going to do now and what should we do in the future? So once again, thank you very much and welcome. And so in this case, let's start the first session. But before I start the first session, once again, I would like to remind you that if you still have not downloaded the finalized version of the conference program, you can find it on the chat box. I have already uploaded it on the chat box, and you can download it, or you can go to the CCAPPTIA conference website and you can download the final version. And also for speakers, one thing is that we have decided that when you are doing your presentation, please share your screen with all the other participants, because I think that that would be the best way for you to control your PowerPoint slides, and I think that would be the most convenient for all of us. We have made the setting of which all of you will be able to share your screen freely. And also finally, because of the time limitation for the speakers, it will be very, very grateful if you can limit your presentation time to approximately 15 minutes, so that we'll be able to keep the time. And before I start, finally, for today, just before the break, I mean, just by the end of the first session and before the break and the second session, we will have a photo taking session, of which by that time, hopefully all of you will be able to switch on your screen, and then we can take a group photo together online. And after that, we will have a break before getting into the second session. So may I first ask, in this case, are there any specific questions from any of the speakers and participants up to this point? Okay, so if not, then I think because we are having an online conference, I think during the presentations, if all of you have any questions in between, my suggestion could be that you can actually put it down in the chat box, and the chair of each session, they will be the moderator to try to read your questions and try to request the speakers to answer. And of course, towards the end of each session, depending on the time, if we have some time left, there will be maybe around 5 to 10 minutes that we can actually have a small discussion session, a Q&A session, of which either you can put your question on the chat box, or at the same time, if you want to, you can actually raise your hand, and then you can actually speak up and ask questions. And I believe that our speakers will also be very glad to answer your questions. Okay. Okay. So if that's the case, then let's start the first session. So our first speaker will be Dr. Yui-yip Joseph Lau. And so Dr. Lau, he himself is a lecturer from the Division of Business and Hospitality Management, the College of Professional and Continuing Education of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And Dr. Lau has published more than 210 research papers in international journals and professional magazines and other type of publication. And also, he is also the chief editor of CView, which is the official magazine of the Institute of Sea Transport of Hong Kong. So today, his presentation topic is a study of the opportunities from cruising in the Arctic region. So in this case, then I will give the floor to Dr. Lau. And so, Dr. Joseph Lau, are you here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Please feel free to share your screen.
Okay, great. And so that can hear my screen share the PowerPoint.
I can see your PowerPoint.
Okay, great. And so that happy to see all of you through the online. And so that this topic is focused study of the opportunities from the cruising in the Arctic regions. And so that most likely this study is just a pilot study and give you some of the ideas about what are the opportunities when we do about the cruising in the Arctic region, because the Arctic region is a quite new area and also an emerging area that we would like to explore. And so that what are the objectives? The first one is about that when we see that the ice melting has already opened up about the new cruise tourism in the Arctic regions. And so that we can see it is become hot issues. And so that more and more cruise ship has already delivered some of their schedules and welcome all the cruisers to visit the cruising destination in the Arctic regions. Surprisingly, many cruise lines are currently not members of the Association of the Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators, and so that there are various adaptation strategies and attitudes to cruising in the Arctic regions are so ambiguous and under research, and so that we would not know about their attitude, their behavior, whether they concern about the environmental impacts. And so that's what are their plan, what are their strategies to adopt about the key challenges as well. And so that we analysis about what kinds of the obstacles the cruise industry face. And so that we can see that the Arctic region is quite rough, is quite harsh climate situation, as well as also very little human factors. And so that actually is quite huge obstacles when the cruise operators to run about the cruise ship in the Arctic region. And so that the second one is what is the most preferred cruise itinerary in the cruiser preference. And so that we would like to see about the demand side, and then based on the demand side, the cruising company can decide what are the cruise itinerary is the most attractive to get the most profitable in that. And also which cruise itinerary generate the most social economic impact in the future. And so that we would like also see some of the environmental situation. Nowadays, the cruising topic is focused on the negative tourism, means that how they have adversary impact of the environment. And also, this preliminary study generates some of the valuable insight on the adaptation strategy and practice for cruise industry and also business sector as well. And so that how could we support about the other business cruise tourism as well. And so that this is the change of the Arctics. And so that you can see that the ice melting areas has already significantly expanded because that is about the climate change impact. And so that there is the, when you see from the 1980 to the 2012, I can see that the Arctic has already changed significantly as well. How can we define about the Arctic regions? And so that actually is, you can see Antarctica kind of north of the 16-degree north with the northern Cube and also all of the Greenland. And so that you can see about the Greenland is the largest Iceland island in the world. And so that you can see that is about exactly about close to the Arctic Circle. I think that this is the definition come from the Arctic Council as well. But out of its geographical scope indicator, it is described as a remote and difficult access. And so that out of the Arctic Circle is quite dangerous. And so that I can say it is unable to pass through the whole of the circumpolar north. And it is quite difficult for the human capital to access. And there is insufficient trained staff and happening in some figure cultural and natural condition as well. And so that the cruise ships most likely is to pass through within the Arctic Circle as well. And so that what are the attractiveness of the Arctic cruise tourism? The first one, I can say they are attractive cruising destinations, and so that you can see many wild animals, for example, polar bears as well. And also second one that is about unexpected cultures, and so that is about the tuna, icebergs, etc. as well. And also there is an increasing shore excursion and exotic experience. It is can give you about the um unforgettable and also very good experience about that. And so that this is the other cruise about the picture. They can see about some of the icebergs, some of the polar bear, and so that we cannot see about the other region as well. And so that when we understand about the other cruising, we need to understand about the market structure as well. Actually, the capacity is expanding steady and also um, very tightly in the coming years with an annual growth rate of around about the 500 birds. And so that you can see about this market is expanding very quickly as well. And more companies are entered about the market with a diversified range of the focus. And so that they will deliver different about the cruise product to serve about the cruise market segment, because we can see the cruiser has many different types of the customer segmentation, has the young peoples, has the elderly whatsoever. And so that there is the different package to attract more people to travel to try about the cruise product as well. At the moment, the market is quite fragmented and does not show any trend of the concentration. And so that the competition between the cruising company is not quite keen competition. And no company is yet strong enough to dominate of the other as well. And so that I can say there is no any market leader in the Arctic cruising issues about that. And also Antarctica slightly more established while Arctic has a strong growth as that. And so that you can see the Arctic is a growing situation. Antarctica is just only well established comparing with the Arctic region. Some of the famous company in the Arctic cruising market actually has about 12 ships to include about that. And there are 11 is the luxury ship is deliver some of the mega yachts and Silver Sea and other luxury cruise line based in the Morocco, but focused on more on the Antarctica about that. And so that the other cruise routing selection. Actually, that's the ice skill role attracted the interest of the observer regarding about the Arctic navigations. And so that they will invest more market research team to develop about the ice skill role to develop many of the cruise port shops in order to gain more attractions about that. And also using Russia, which is the largest other country and the only country with the shortest distance to Europe as an example. We use about the 5 main factors: geographical locations, sustainable development, navigation factors, human factor, and China-Russia cooperation foundation to assess 10 typical Arctic ports as well. And so that we give some of the ideas which of the ports is the most suitable to run about the Arctic cruise regions about that. And so that you can see there are the summary of the 10 Arctic port evaluations. And so that 5 is the excellent, good is the 4, satisfactory is 3, fair is 2, unsatisfactory is 1. And so that you can see that most likely you can see some of the is quite large variations about that. Some of the ports are quite very poor, some of the ports are quite excellent. And so that we just give you about the brief pictures about some of the rating score about that. And so that there are the 4 Arctic ports performed below a satisfactory level. And so that these 4 ports will be phased out when we consider about some of the Arctic cruise port selection about that. And one other part I just think is about the fair level about that, maybe not considered about that. And the 5 other ports is over about the satisfactory level as that. And so that we will like to consider about that. Among 10 other ports about that, and the CCAPPTIA and also the Maki rated the highest scores, imply that they are considered as a desirable Arctic ports to stay and then pass through about the Arctic regions. And so that when we choose about Russia, we will choose these 2 ports as the desirable about Arctic cruise ports as well. And so that in the future, we would like to think that we can generate supporting Arctic cruise industry, include some about the energy is very important. Because most likely we need to fulfill about the IMO, so that we need to some of the energy measure. Also, some of the shipbuilding has the repair maintenance, especially for the ship hull has a problem. And so that we need to some of the repair maintenance has the shipping finance do some of the investment intermodal transport, maybe to air transport plus cruise about that, and also the logistics, ocean engineering, and harbor construction as well. I think that we need to maintain about the regular repair maintenance is very important because the weather is quite extreme about that. And so that we think that these 2 parts are better, and Makati will become a strategic other port to connect between other region and other parts of the world. And so that we would like to give some of the suggestions. And so that what are the regulations will govern about the other cruise ship operation. And all this does not involve some of the environmental issue, but also involve some of the socio-economic aspects about that. For example, in Canada, there are about 600 habitable communities scattered across the Northern Territories about that. And also, any types of the pollution generated by shipping, including cruise ship, may affect migration routes and marine behaviors that can pose huge impacts on the livelihoods of such communities about that, because they will concern some of the wild animals movement about that. So that there is an urgent need for better legislations and guidelines that govern about the Arctic shipping, including some of the Arctic cruise operation in Northern Canada as well. So that's why when I at the beginning mentioned that some of the countries not related to the association, so that we do not think what are the attitude and behavior towards about that. And so that, and also we think about the polar code is about concern about ensuring stricter practice within polar water is warranted as an essential and positive development for the Arctic shipping as well. And so that we have set about the guidelines for the operations of passenger vessels in Canadian Arctic waters. And this of the guidelines is one to promote better quality passenger ship operations in Canada, including about the cruise, and also to clarify some of the responsibilities between different parties when we have an interest in the Arctic shipping, hold up what kinds of the responsibility and roles to perform about that, and consolidate about the expectation and commitments of those who organize about the Arctic tourism and trips, and so that we may to develop about the different cluster of cruising shipping in order to generate about the key roles and responsibility as well. And so that there are the pollution prevention guidelines for the operation of cruise ship under Canadian jurisdictions, and it could help about the cruise ship operators to develop better procedure to comply with Canadian legislation on Arctic shipping and pollution as well. And we would like to suggest some of the best practice that cruise ship operators are strongly encouraged to follow, and so that some of the guidelines can state clearly on how cruise ship operators should undertake about the waste management. Because nowadays, the cruise ship also concern about the waste management, about the waste regeneration about that. And over the framework on reporting, inspection, and the preparation of training and educational material as that. And so that to conclude, although that a number of the other countries provide basic infrastructure or facilities at the Arctic region, and the Russian government implements a feasible policy to explore about the Arctic region. But the Arctic region still some of the substantial problem. That means it's a fundamental problem due to a lack of significant development of marine infrastructure and regulations in the Canadian Arctic waters. And so that it is just some has laps behind, has a long road to achieve some of the sustainable development. So that's the European and Arctic cruising is still a questionable issue and ambiguous about that. And so that lead to some of the government support, some of the good framework about that. And so that currently, as I said, that different cruise, there are a lot of members of the Association of the Arctic Expansion Cruise Operator. And so that we do not know about exactly their awareness, adaptation strategy, and attitude as well. And so that we will investigate about a large scale of the survey from cruiser and in-depth interview from tourism association, government bodies, policymaker, and cruise liners to see what they think about that. And so that this is what I would like to mention about that, to share about that. Thank you so much.
And so thank you very much, Dr. Lau. So I think we do have some time for one or two questions. So may I ask the floor, are there any quick questions? Either if you can raise your hand or either you can leave a message on the chat box. Okay, so I don't see any at this point. So I think we can go on to the next speaker. Well, actually, the next speaker should be Professor James Wang. But I think at this point, I think in the participants list, I actually don't see Professor Wang here. I don't think he is here at the moment. So I think what I will do is that let me first move to the next speaker. So I think the next speaker is Dr. Wan Chengpeng. So Dr. Wang Chengpeng is an assistant professor of Intelligent Transport System Research Center, Wuhan University of Technology. And he has received his BSc in Marine Engineering from Wuhan University of Technology in 2012 and PhD in Marine and Transport Engineering from Liverpool John Moores University, UK in 2019. Dr. Wang's major research interests include maritime safety and security analysis, risk-based multiple attribute decision-making in maritime field, applications of complex network in marine transportation, and resilience management of transport systems. He has authored 4 book chapters, 20 refereed journal papers, and 14 refereed conference papers. And today, the topic that Dr. Wang is going to share with us is called Influences of the COVID-19 on China's Global Maritime Container Shipping, a Network Perspective. So up to you, Dr. Wang. Dr. Wang, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you please share your screen?
Okay. Let's see. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I'm using a double screen, so just to make sure that that's the right screen. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Adolf. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chengpeng Wang from the Intelligent Transportation Systems Research Center, Wuhan University of Technology, China. I'm glad to meet you all here in the online conference. And also, it's my great honor to have this chance to share some of my recent work with you. Today, I'm going to introduce our research on the influence of the COVID-19 on China's global container shipping from a network perspective. It's a work by Mr. Jiale, Professor Di Zhang, and me. So my presentation consists of the following 5 parts. First of all, I'd like to show you some information of the development of container shipping, especially during the 2020, the first year of the COVID-19. As we all know, maritime transportation is the visible backbone of the global economy, without which international seaborne trade could not occur. According to the statistics of the Alpha Niner, it can be seen that the capacity of global container ships shows an increasing trend in recent years, with an increased rate of 4.2% each year on average. However, the recent and ongoing global outbreak of the coronavirus, which is also known as the COVID-19, has had a major impact on global shipping, affecting all shipping sectors from passenger ships to container ships. A report from the European Maritime Safety Agency indicates that the total number of calls made by vessels flying the flags of EU member states increased each year between 2016 and 2019. However, in 2020, the total calls figure dropped by around 3.5% in comparison to 2019, with the related overall gross tonnage dropping by around 10%, with a significant decrease in the second quarter of 2020. Another more detailed statistics comparing the number of ship calls per week between 2019 and 2020 showed that the significant decrease in the number of ships and in the number of ship calls began in the 12th week of 2020, which is around the 16 to 2012 March, in which the number of calls decreased by around 17% in comparison with 2019. This was the week after the WHO declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic. And this trend can also be observed in the comparison of EU seaborne trade between 2019 and 2020. The EU seaborne trade, both imports and exports, declined sharply from March 2020 as shown in the picture, but the trade volume of EU exports began to rebound after May 2020, while that of EU imports continued decreasing until July 2020. Besides, it can be seen that overall, EU seaborne trade declined more significantly than global trade across 2020. So how is the situation in China? To answer this question, we investigated the influence of COVID-19 on China's global container shipping from a topological perspective. And here is the methodology. Here is the methodology used in this research as a highly interconnected global maritime container transportation system. It functions with all the features and the characteristics of a typical network. So it can be abstracted to a graph in which ports are viewed as the nodes and the liner shipping service as the arcs within the network. If all the links within the network have the same importance, it is called an unweighted network. Otherwise, it is a weighted network, as the picture shows. And as regarding the network representation, there are general two ways. The one is the graph of direct links, which is also called the GDL, and another is the graph of all links. It is also called the GAL. So the GDL means that each port can be directly connected continuously, whereas the GAL includes direct and indirect connections. In this research, we selected the GAL representation since it can better reflect the transit relationship of ports. And here are some basic indicators for describing the statistical topological features of a network, which are weighted degree, clustering coefficient, and average path length. And here is the calculation of some centrality measures in a weighted network. Centrality measures are among the most widely used indicators based on network data in a shipping network. They generally reflect a port's role in connecting others in cargo transportation. Here, the closeness centrality represents the sum of the shortest distance from all ports to a fixed one, which indicates the center location of a port in a shipping network. And the below is the betweenness centrality. It measures the extent to which a port is the middle of other port pairs in a network. With this in mind, so we conduct a case study of the Chinese exports container shipping network. The liner service information is from February 2020 to May 2021. It's about, we collected around 50 world shipping companies, including Maersk Line, COSCO Shipping, and the CMA-CGM Group, and so on. Only those shipping routes starting from Chinese ports are counted in this research in order to better reflect the situation of container shipping network originated from China. So below is a screenshot of the sample. And the surface information contains the port of origin, transit port, destination port, and capacity and the stop shipping caused by the COVID-19. And the data bank consists of service information from 9 major shipping lines, such as North Europe and the Mediterranean route, North America route, and so on. It is also should be noted that we planned to analyze the change of China's global shipping network of the whole year of 2020. However, due to the data accessibility of data, only the information of North European and the Mediterranean route, which is also known as NEM route, from February 2020 to January 2021 can be collected. So we select this shipping route as a representation in this research. And here we can see this figure. It indicates the change of container shipping capacity of Chinese exports by week. and it is from the 6th to the 21st week. The height of each bar represents the total container shipping capacity, where the blue part represents the blank line capacity, which means the capacity of shipping routes being stopped. And while the red part indicates the shipping capacity rest in use. As can be seen from this figure, at the beginning of the outbreak of COVID-19, which is also the 6th week of 2020, China's international shipping capacity suffered from a huge loss. More than 50% of the total capacity have been lost. And later, thanks to the series of prevention and control measures of the COVID-19 by Chinese government, the container shipping capacity began to recover. It can be seen from the changing trend from the 6th to the 12th week. However, as the epidemic continued to spread globally, at the end of March, the proportion of blank line capacity once again fluctuated and increased from the 12th week. And this picture is the change of shipping capacity of NEM route of Chinese exports by month. It can be seen that, except for the second month, the NEM route worked in a situation where almost more than half of the shipping capacity by TEU was lost in 2020 compared to the normal condition. Also, based on the collected data, we built the network mode for container shipping of Chinese exports, both at a global level, shown as the left picture, and a shipping line level, shown as the right one. So as for the whole global shipping network, there are altogether 106 ports and 859 shipping lines involved. Its average degree is 16. Which means for each port, there are another 16 ports on average being connected to it directly, and the average pass length is 1.85, indicating that the average connection through 2 ports or 1 transfer can complete the connection between the 2 ports. The clustering coefficient is 0.49, indicating that the probability of connecting the probability of connecting the 2 ports is around 49%. When we see the mode of NEM shipping network on the right side, it shows that although there are only 54 ports and around 400 shipping lines involved, which is half of the global network, it has a similar topological feature according to the value of these 3 indicators. And this picture reveals the change of spatial structure of the China's NEM shipping network in the last year. In this network, the size of the node reflects the closeness centrality of port, and the thickness of the line represents the weight of shipping lines between 2 ports, which is determined by the total shipping capacity of each shipping line. It can be seen that Shanghai and the Ningbo Zhoushan ports always have a relatively higher closeness centrality last year, but for European countries, at the beginning of 2020, the closeness centrality of Port Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Hamburg is relatively high, but the value decreased as time went on. And following is the weighted degree centrality of the top 5 ports in China's NEM shipping network, which are Ningbo, Shanghai, Yantian, Rotterdam, and Qingdao ports. So generally, they can be grouped in 2 levels. The first are Ningbo and Shanghai ports. They have a relatively higher weighted degree, which can be seen in the right picture in red and blue lines. And the other level is the Yantian, Rotterdam, and Qingdao ports. So from the picture, it can be seen that the weighted degree centrality of these 5 ports fluctuated and increased in the last year. And here is the weighted closest centrality of the top 5 ports in the sample shipping network. The reason why you can see only 4 lines is that the port of Ningbo and Shanghai shows the same, totally the same changing trend. And the last is the weighted between centrality of the 5 ports. So from this study, we can see that the impact of the COVID-19 on the shipping network is profound, with the number of blank shipping lines increasing sharply. And second, by analyzing the topological features, the network basically has the characteristics of a small world. Thirdly, from the research, we can see that the ports in some regions have obvious agglomeration and strong container transport capacity, especially in the Chinese coastal areas, including Yangtze River Delta ports, like Shanghai Port and the Ningbo Port and the Pearl River Delta ports. And also the hub ports play an indispensable role in the shipping network. Finally, this research can help provide decision support for liner operators on shipping route design. So for future research, I think we can continue to extend this research on the following 2 aspects. The first is conduct a comparative analysis of the influence of COVID-19 on China's inland waterway transport networks, especially under today's dual circulation development pattern. Another important research direction is that we can conduct port backup research. This will be useful for shipping network optimization under emergency situation in future. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wen, for the very interesting presentation. In fact, I actually see one of our audience have a question. Chang Ming, right? Chang Ming, please.
Thank you, Adolf. Thank you, Dr. Wang, for this very interesting research and presentation. So, sorry, I have actually a pretty naive question. I might have missed it, but what is the purpose of this research? Because as far as I can see, I think there is some great potential for the research. But what your conclusion? So this one, are you suggesting that before the COVID, the network of the Chinese ports don't show the small world characteristics, or some of the conclusions here, as I can see, I think they are probably the same before and after the COVID. So I want to know, why this research is important or critical for us to understand the impact of the COVID-19.
Okay, thank you for your question. So at first, we only conduct the analysis of the shipping capacity to see after the COVID-19, after the influence of COVID-19, what's the situation of shipping capacity in Chinese global shipping network. It can be seen in this picture. But we only collect the information of the first 21st week. In this part, in terms of the container shipping capacity, we conducted the analysis by week to see how the shipping capacity changes and if any prevention and control measures by China can help to reduce the influence of COVID-19 And for another part is the reason why we conduct the research from a topological perspective is that, in fact, we want to see that what's the resilience of the Chinese global container shipping network. Because at first we have considered another indicator called the global network efficiency. So we want to see, after the stop of some shipping lines, how is the change of global network efficiency, and what can we do to reduce this impact and help to increase the global network efficiency and to improve the shipping network resilience in face of this emergency situation. But as this research hasn't been done completely, so I just show the formal part of our research. Hope this helps.
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wang. Adolf, can I make Mawuli, sorry, can I make 2 more comments before I move to Mawuli for the question?
Very quick comment.
Sure, welcome.
Very quick comment. So Dr. Wang, I think there are just like some thoughts over what you have presented. One is that maybe would you consider to combine this connectivity analysis with the development of like COVID-19 in China, probably, because I mean you probably haven't covered this part, but in the past month or so, the Yantian port has been seriously affected, right? So so in a way, I think it's like if a port can actually maintain its connectivity even with the outbreak of COVID cases, in a certain, like in the city where the port is located, I think that probably actually shows the resilience of the port, right? Because if there is no COVID cases in the city, of course, like the port shouldn't be affected. Maybe like, I mean, at least like has a lower probability to be affected. So I think that's one thing that you may, I mean, I don't know, but you may find it interesting to look into. And the other is like, I also know that maybe some of this loss of connectivity is not due to the port themselves, but due to the loss or the lack of containers, right? Because I think that's another issue. It's like when the containers goes to North America or Europe, they're not going back. So that probably also will affect the I don't know whether it's going to affect the connectivity, but I think it's going to be something that you need to differentiate, right? So it's like you want to figure out whether it's caused by this particular port or the other ports or the other parts of the world. So yeah, I mean, sorry, I think I take too much time, so I will just maybe pass it to Mawuli for the question. Okay. But thank you for this very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chang-Ming.
Thank you for your comments.
We have you actually have 2 questions. So actually, I think the question on the chat box comes first. So I will start with the question on the chat box and followed by Mawuli. Okay. So the question on the chat box is from Dr. Yui-yip. So what are the impacts of recent delay of 14+ days at Yantian port due to COVID-19, and how would the network indicators change?
What are the impacts of recent delay of 14 days? So in fact, the one thing I should say that is in this research, we should put Yantian and Circle Port together, because basically they are terminals of Shenzhen port. So so in fact, if I mean represent these 2 terminals by Shenzhen port, I think the the result will be more accuracy. Also, as for your question, the impact of recent delay at the Yantian port. So I think your question is mainly at a port level, right? But the result from this research is mainly at shipping network level. So that may not able to provide the result as accurate as the a port. I mean the port you mentioned. So I'm not sure if some of the port being influenced by the COVID-19, how the whole network will perform. But
okay.
I think, I think the centrality of Yantian port may decrease. This can be seen from the centrality measures.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have one more question from Mawuli. Please, Mawuli.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. I wanted to find out, so after the COVID-19, or we are still in the COVID-19 though, how resilient are the Chinese system in terms of how the system was able to respond to the COVID-19? How will you say, did it respond well, or maybe there are things that you need to put in to make it more resilient from your study? Thank you.
Sorry, can you say it again? Do you mean how to measure the resilience, or?
I mean, from your study, how did the system respond to the COVID-19 pandemic? I mean, the port system. How did it respond? Do you think the Chinese system was robust enough, or do you think there are things that they need to put in place for the system to be more resilient to unforeseen circumstances like the pandemic?
Okay, thank you for the question, but sorry, we can't get the specific answer of this question at the moment. Of course, we haven't found a good indicator or measure to represent the resilience of the whole network. So we don't know if the sample network in our research has the enough resilience in face of the COVID-19. This may be for the follow-up research also with the countermeasures to improve the resilience of the shipping network. Hope this answers your question.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mawuli, and also thank you very much, Dr. Wang. I think for the sake of time, I think let's move to the next speaker. So for the next speaker is Dr. Tang Yuk Ming from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Hong Kong, China. Dr. Tang received his BSc and MPhil from the Chinese University of Hong Kong and a PhD degree from the same university. He worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the Faculty of Medicine at Chinese University of Hong Kong after graduation, and now teaching at the Department of Industrial and System Engineering at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So Dr. Tang is the lab in charge in integrated product design and deputy lab in charge of the Tat Lun Digital Factory in the department. And his research interests include virtual reality, mixed reality, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, computer aid design, and healthcare application. So today, Dr. Tang will share with us a topic on a design-based research framework for simulating climate change with virtual reality. So Dr. Tang, I can already see your share screen. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Adolf, to provide me this great opportunity to share all of you my topics, a design-based research framework for simulating climate change with virtual reality. My research interest is related to the virtual reality and digital twin, and also different kinds of latest technologies part. And I'm not the expert of the maritime and logistics. So, but I think that these latest technologies can be applied in many different applications, not only in healthcare or other applications, but also it will be very important to be applied in the logistic and maritime applications. So if you have any further idea how we can apply these technologies into the logistic applications, so please feel free to give me your comment and suggestions. So so first of all, let me talking about before I talk about the virtual reality. First of all, I'd like to talk about the virtual teaching, because nowadays we are under the COVID-19 outbreak, and our universities are actually implementing the virtual teaching since 2019, which is a little bit earlier before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, because of not only due to the COVID-19, but also due to the social unrest reason. So actually Hong Kong has been implement the virtual teaching for a very long time. For this reason, our university has devoted a lot of resources on implementing virtual teaching. So I'm sure the recent application of the virtual reality is very important for apply the virtual teaching nowadays. But besides the virtual teaching, recently some of our subjects are implementing the hybrid teaching. So that means besides implementing face-to-face teaching, we will simultaneously implementing online teaching, so that for those students who are not in Hong Kong, they can still attend our lesson during the pandemic period. So there are many advantages of applying the virtual teaching, as well as applying the latest virtual reality technologies on teaching. First of all is that we'd like to enhance the motivation, because nowadays if we apply the virtual teaching, you see that they just looking at the screen, looking at the screen of the computer. They may not have very good motivations for learning. So how can we enhance their motivation for learning? So we suggest that we can also implementing some of the other virtual reality technology, so that they can be more immersive to be devoted into our teaching and learning activities. And another reasons for the virtual reality teaching is that we like to reduce the distance with the international collaborators. So actually, besides for this topic, actually we are also having another projects which related to the collaborations in different projects by using the virtual reality technology. That means the different people from different locations can connect to each other using the virtual reality headset, and they can communicate to each other, so that they can collaborate to do some projects. So at this case, we can also reduce the distance between our students as well as the international students. And other advantages of applying the virtual reality technologies in the teaching is that it enables students to review and learning anytime. So actually, besides implementing virtual reality for the climate change or other logistic problems, we also need to teach a lot of different theory and to the students. And sometimes we may need to have some practical practice for the student. For example, if you are in the logistics application, you may need to teach students the real scenarios in the port. So because of the COVID-19, the students may not have the opportunity to go to the port to see how the logistic operations. So in this case, we can make use of the virtual reality so that the students can still experience the logistic flow of the port or other logistic process. And besides that, the students can also experience the virtual reality anytime, so that students not only attend the lesson during class, they can also try the virtual reality teaching and learning after the classes. So finally, is that I think the virtual teaching has a very good advantages is that it is environmental friendly, because unlike the traditional classroom teaching, we usually need to print out some logs or materials. Nowadays, we implement everything online using the system. So this is another advantage of applying the virtual reality in the teaching and educations. So actually, the virtual reality has become, was developed for many years ago. It was started in early 1950. So at that time, it is still a very preliminary starting of the using of the virtual reality. And then later on, the virtual reality technology has been developed very fast. For example, we start to develop the other hardware besides the head-mount devices. We also develop many different hardwares like the glove or pen or other different hardware for the virtual reality applications. And nowadays, the virtual reality has been rapidly developed. It is because of one of the major reasons is that the technologies of the computers has been growing very quickly. So this quickly development of the computer technology, the quickly development of the computer technology not only support the development of the virtual reality application, but also in many different different technology as well. The reasons why the virtual reality has been going very fast is that the you know that when we're using the virtual reality, we need to have a very good hardware, especially the computer graphics card. So the graphics card can support not only for the virtual reality, but also for the artificial intelligence as well as the blockchain technology. So that's why nowadays the VR, AI, blockchain are growing very quickly. So when talking about the approach for implementing the virtual teaching, actually there are 3 different major approach for the virtual teaching. So we can call this virtual teaching an immersive technology for teaching and learning. First of all, everyone know that we have the virtual reality, and we also have the augmented reality. And nowadays we also have a more new terms, which is similar to the augmented reality, is the mixed reality. So these 3 are the most common approach for implementing the virtual teaching. So what are the difference between these 3 approaches? That for the virtual reality, we are talking about the entirely digital environments. So this is called virtual reality. But for the augmented reality, that means that we will encompass both the digital content as well as the real environment. However, there's no any relationship or interaction between the digital and the real environment. But for the mixed reality, the digital content and the real world has to be internet to each other. For example, when you look at this figure, you can see that the digital content is behind this furniture. But for the augmented reality, you cannot see any relationship between the digital and the real world. So this is some of the examples of our previous project that implementing the mixed reality. So previously we have developed a mixed reality application. So when students look at the teaching materials, then we can show the structure of the, for example, for this log is talking about the turbo engine. Then we just when the student take a look on the materials, then we show the 3D models of the turbo engines, and then we can also interact with the turbo with this digital model to provide some interaction with the students. The students can also click to enlarge the materials, the turbo engine, so that they can take a look on the designs of this engine, as well as look at some of the explanation on the function for each components. And actually, the virtual reality can also be applied in many different kinds of applications in teaching and training. Like, for example, they can be applied in the virtual field trips, so they can apply it on the science class. It can be also applied in the content creation, like the architecture. It can also be applied in some of the special educations. So you will see that the virtual realities can be applied in many different scenarios. So you know that nowadays the climate change education is also very important to the students, because for example, in Hong Kong, most of the students are stay inside their home, and they will feel comfortable, they can feel safe. However, they don't have much experience to experience the impact of the climate crisis. So it is very good chance for them to experience how they need to tackle the problem of the climate change. So, but in Hong Kong, it is very difficult for the student to find these kinds of sudden change of the climate crisis. So in that case, what we can do is to apply the virtual reality technology so that the student can experience in that case. So the climate change education is also important for the public to empowering their knowledge, skill, value, attitudes, and the need how to react during the climate crisis. So let me show you a video showing how the climate change education is important. So you can see that there are actually many different climate change scenario, flooding, fire, melting ice, and so on. So we can apply the virtual reality for them to experience these kinds of climate crisis. So the VR in climate change can provide students with the immersive experience, 360-degree of the immersive experience to know what will happen during the climate crisis. We also like to determine how this VR technology can reduce their psychological distance to the climate change. And this is also a very good preventive approach for the public to experience with the climate changes. So in order to develop the real content for doing the climate change research, one approach is using the design-based research. So in the design-based research methodology, it is actually a field for the learning science. It can be used to support the development of the VR program for simulating the climate change. So in this methodology, actually, it can be divided into several major phases. So first of all, it's about the exploration, the analysis part. We may need to have some different collaborators and researcher participants, and then we'll need to discuss how we are going to design our climate change scenarios. And then secondly is that we need to develop our VR content for the climate change so that the students can be able to experience this climate change crisis. And then besides that, we also need to design some of the feedback questionnaires so that the students will be firstly, we need to invite some students for the pilot run to evaluate the feedback on these kinds of real climate change scenarios, and then they need to have some reflection to us so that we can make further improvement. After some pilot study from the students, we can launch to another group of students for performing real studies to determine whether the climate change content can actually address our research questions. But due to the pandemic situation, unfortunately, in order to implementing some evaluation, we need to invite some students to our lab in order to get some reflection and comment. But because nowadays we still implementing the online teaching for more than 2 years, so we still haven't good opportunity to invite students to participate in our study. So in the future, we will continue our project and hope that we will get some more results later. So this is the end of my sharing. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Tang. So may I ask, are there any questions? In fact, I have a very quick question, Dr. Tang. So in your opinion, what will be the role of virtual reality in both transport and logistics in the post-pandemic world, or even now during the pandemic world? In your opinion, what will be the prospect?
Well, okay. In my opinion, I think in the future, many of our content are moving into the virtual and digital world. So if we can make use of some of the digital content and then moving some of the content to the virtual reality, then it will be a very good opportunity for us to develop more content for the students for teaching and learning using the virtual reality.
I see. Thank you very much. And so again, are there any other questions? Okay, so I don't see any other further questions. So thank you. And let's move on to the next speaker. The next speaker is Professor Paul Tae-Woo Lee from Ocean College, Zhejiang University, China. So Professor Lee is a professor and director of Maritime Logistics and Free Trade Island Research Center, Zhejiang University in China. His recent research lies in the impacts of the Belt and Road Initiative and maritime transport and logistics, and he is the editor-in-chief of Journal of International Logistics and Trade. So the topic that Professor Lee is sharing with us today is global port supply chain development along the Belt and Road. So Okay, so in this case then, let me first very quickly present Dr. Tianni Wang. So Dr. Tianni Wang is from the College of Transport and Communications of Shanghai Maritime University, China. She is an assistant professor there with a PhD degree in management study at Liverpool John Moores University in the UK. And since 2020, she served as the Secretary of Water Transport Department of the World Transport Congress, organized and participated in the annual meetings of the China Association of Science and Technology and large-scale international conferences, such as the International Young Scholars Online Forum. Her current research interest covers transportation, logistics, and supply chain management, climate change and adaptation planning. And so today, Dr. Wang will be sharing with us on a topic on climate change research on transportation systems, climate risk adaptation and planning. So Dr. Wang, please.
Well, thank you so much for your introduction. First of all, I really appreciate that I can have the opportunity to present it again, attending the second conference. I still remember the last year, the last one was in University of Manitoba. And now I'm in Shanghai. And so today I would like to share a paper just published last year, co-authored by Tianni Yang in UK, my previous supervisor, and Ethan.
Tianni, please share your screen.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so today my presentation will be divided to the 5 parts, including the research background, the method we have done, the literature review. Actually, I have to explain that this work is mainly about the literature review about the climate change and adaptation area, focus on the road and rail transport. And then I will introduce some of the trades in this area and some critical analysis based on the context as on the selected papers and some implications and the future directions. So here is the paper we published last year. So the first is the research background. According to the IPCC's report, the climate system has been warming since the last century. So as we can see here on the 2 pictures on the corner, in the past decades, the temperature have been rising around 0.75 to 0.99 degree. So we can also feel the times the warming tendency that, such as a damaged amount of snow and the sea level rise. And talking about climate change and transportation, as we can see that climate change has posed critical impacts on transport infrastructure, like operation, or policy making, adaptation planning, etc. So talking about the transport systems, as we know, it includes like road, rail, aviation, and shipping. So before I come to UK, I'm doing the climate adaptation in port and shipping area, and then I focus on the inland transport like a road and rail. But now, because I'm in Shanghai Maritime, so I would like to switch my research back to shipping and ports, actually. Maybe more related to China's background. And so the related activities of transport system are quite sensitive to the different extremes, such as the variation in precipitation, temperature, like high winds, thunderstorm, the fog days, the visibility, and sea level rise, etc. And as we all know that there are 2 primary strategies to deal with the impact posed by climate change. The first is mitigation, the other one is adaptation. So I think here quite a lot of scholars like expert in this area, so I've not explained too much about the definition. And here are some examples, such as about the mitigation adaptation strategies, such as the modal switch from the road to rail, building up some protection walls, setting up the protecting system, and building the cross-drainage and drainage works to reduce the impact from the flooding, and setting up the wind signs, something like that. And actually, we believe it's a systematic analysis which focuses on the climate change impact to transportation system. So on that paper. So basically, we have done a comprehensive review on this research paper related to this topic, in particularly in roads and rails, because we think that in these two areas more related because it's in inland base, and shipping or port is more like another area, and aviation currently there were very little numbers of published papers. So that's why we focus on the two modes. And that the papers, the research was undertaken in December 2018. And there are two primary databases. The first is Web Science, and another one is Merit Management Plus. And we also used a systematic literature network analysis, which was utilized in supply chain risk management. And we also done some codership analysis. There were 12 keywords such as climate change, impact, risks, adaptation, planning, as you can see here. And we can see that this topic, the related papers was presented exist since 1970. So until 2018, there are around more than 200 papers initially, and then we reviewed 100 peer-reviewed journals papers, which was featured in 65 international recognized journals. And then after collecting the 100 papers, so we try to analyze these papers based on how have they developed, what's the trade in this area. So in general, there are a very strong growing potential in terms of the numbers and the qualities about the papers published in the past decades. So as we can also see here, since 2012, there is a growing potential regarding the numbers of published paper. Before 12, there was only about 3.4 papers per year. So I'd have to explain a little bit because I just present this work last week in the TRV sessions. So people maybe ask me that they don't quite believe the numbers, it's just very little. But actually, I think last year, because I'm still doing some literature review about this area more, also including the port, shipping, and the aviation. So actually, last year there were quite a lot of papers published. I think more than 20. Yeah, and also attend the conference. I think last month. Adolf told me that everyone's doing climate adaptation now. So so it's quite a surprise that it's developed quite fast recently. So anyway, according to this research, like I also list the top 5 journals, including like the Transportation Research Record, Research Part D, Climatic Change, etc. Talking about the evaluation of the evolution of the geographic location and cultureship, as we can see that the authors from North America and Europe were the main focus, the main force on this area during the period between the 2005 and 2018. But gradually, especially after 2012, like other national researchers from the South America, Africa, and Asia have gradually joined the international team. And we also done some analysis based on the coalition. Like we can see that based on the analysis from the software we used called the Netminer, there were two primary communities presented by the Zhinovsky and Chengpeng. Actually, we also noticed that group one mainly focused on North American, African, the Asian areas that we mentioned is developed after 2012, and another group was mainly focused on the European area. And in terms of the methods utilized to analyze to do the research, we can see that the qualitative research methods are still the primary methods compared to the quantitative ones. So it makes up like 76% of the total. And then the case studies and conception works are the primary methods, accounting around 41% of the total publication. And then we also noticed that some papers use mixed methods, such as combining the qualitative methods, such as the conception work with case study, or using the modeling with the case study. That I believe that's some mixed method we always utilize in the research, right? And the thematics analysis is also the main body of this research. So basically, we, according to the context of those papers, we divided them to the 6 dimensions as below, such as the impact of climate change, like risk assessment, the asset management, policy making, and planning, and climate adaptation on transportation and others. And then for each of the dimension, we also do some analysis. So firstly is the impact of climate change on transportation. So as you can see from this chart, we analyzed and some categorized the weather parameters based on the 5 dimensions, such as the precipitation, temperature, sea level, thunderstorms, wind, visibility, and below this those weather parameters, we also can see the different categories and the corresponding impacts. So I will not go through too many details. So if you are interested, you can read this paper. So I have to say that there were quite a lot of the research have focused on the impact of climate change on transportation, but actually some research have maturely developed at the national or multi-regional scales, especially some developed countries such as the UK or US. They have done quite a lot of research about that. However, there are still some gaps, such as that in the UK road assistance, climate change is not all on the all phase of the transportation decision making. And the UK road rails, the only research is only recently that more attention have focused on the impact of climate change on transportation. And for the Asian countries, is very new topics, I think, in climate. So for example, the climate change impact on road infrastructure in Vietnam and another paper discussed the building infrastructure in the 4 Asian countries. And research, after knowing the impact of climate change, the first step is to analyze the climate change risks. We also characterize some tools such as the GIS, that's what we quite familiar with, the Geographic Information Systems, and other tools such as CIA, GEM, LCC, etc. The gaps exist that realize that there are a few uncertainties in decision making because climate change itself is quite uncertain. It's hard to predict, and also it's involving some changing social, economic, and political dimensions, or some direct and indirect impacts. Maybe it's hard to measure by data. And also there are insufficient attention on some particular type of climate change event or transportation assets. And when we searching the papers, we found that asset management is also quite related to this this topic. So we also characterize in a category. So there was some risk-based methodology and adaptation framework, and some people established as asset management system and building information modeling like BIM. We also found in this area, there are still some gaps, such as the limited data, inadequate treatment of risks, or lack of sufficient financial resources from the government or the higher level agency. And adaptation planning and policy making is also one of the key aspects in this area. As we know that mitigation-related policies such as using the pricing or the tax-related method can maybe reduce the impact of greenhouse gas emissions. However, I think for climate adaptation, there is still lack of some systematic ways. The gaps realize that the expected goals and the capacity of policy in response to climate change have not sufficiently treated into action. So sometimes it follows the top-down pattern. And when the higher level manager makes some decisions, so the staff may be hard to translate it to the action. They have no idea what exactly to do. And focus on the proofing of the infrastructure against the future climate change, but sometimes ignored as important factors in short and medium terms. Transportation adaptation to climate change. I think there are a few papers focused on the trade-offs between the mitigation and adaptation. And I think I know Charming and other professors also published some papers discussed some economic analysis about the mitigation adaptation, right? I think it's also a tendency. And however, I think there are a lot of research about climate adaptation, but on the transportation area, it's still early stage compared to mitigation. Maybe this this argument is a bit outdated because there are quite a lot of papers published in the past 2 years. But I think they still have quite a large space to develop. And there are quite a middle size or case studies. Just as I said, maybe some policy-related papers think that follow the top-down policy pattern. So existing literature sometimes is too vague or focus on general principles or overly developed technical papers or adaptation about adaptation measures. So it's relatively scaled, lacking in dominance. So it's hard to find dominant journals or researchers or theories. So current transportation investment planning will not catch up the climate change impacts adequately. I will explain that later. And here I also list some climate adaptation tools framework on transportation. So you can see there are some tools such as blueprinting, DAP, and some localized one like Yui-yip for adaptation measures for transportation to climate change, or some New York City's panel on climate change. So I'll not go through all the details. So finally, we can summarize some implications from the literature review and provide some future research directions. So there are some barriers we can review from these papers. So in overall, the existing research, I think, is still at embryotic stage with inadequate attention on specific transport adaptation planning or nationwide adaptation strategies. I think the reason that the data is still is not easy to collect. So for example, in my previous PhD work, so most of data are collected by survey or interview. So the historical data is not easy to collect based on the research purpose. And also some cost-benefit analysis, such as we utilize the fuzzy Bayesian network, but there are other methods maybe pose a significant challenge for the transportation planners. So another issue that I mentioned that it's the current transportation investment planning cannot address the climate change impacts adequately. So firstly is that it's hard to know the investment, the return, as it may fail to reach the expected effect or profit under a new climate parameters as the climate change goes faster or it's going to be worse. So the previous infrastructure developed 50 years ago maybe have to be redesigned or updated. And another things like many adaptation tools, framework could not explicitly design for transportation sector. So some tools can only for general adaptation planning or for the country or for city planning, etc., but not is exactly for this sector. So for future directions, we call for a more comprehensive analysis on adaptation planning in terms of identifying the feasibility, deficiency, and resilience. I think resilience is also very important factor in this research. So as well as how to motivate or stimulate the people's attention to do the climate adaptation. And we also have to balance the investment in infrastructure with the planning circle, especially under some financial restricts. And we expect a more integrated management of transportation system containing the systematic planning guidance at different stage. And also we promote the cooperation between the multiple organizations and different stakeholders, such as the road and rail. When we have done the research, when we did the research, I would think the cooperation between the two sectors is very important. Finally, I think a conception framework for developing a long-term climate change adaptation planning in transportation systems could be worked. So I think some of the papers or books have talked about it. So such as starting from identifying climate risks in transportation to finally prioritize climate measures for transportation system, etc. So here as the presentation I want to share today. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wang. So are there any, maybe one quick question? Are there any questions? Okay, so if not, then actually that's the end of session 1. But one thing first is that before we go into the break, may I suggest one thing? Let's have a photo together just before the break. And Tianni, can you first close down your share screen?
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, just okay.
Okay, so so we are going to have a photo together before the break. So may I ask if you would like to? Can you please open your video so that we can have a photo together? So yes. Okay, just wait for 1 second. Let's just make sure that everybody switch on their video.
Adolf, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you very clearly. And okay, so first, again, for video, I just say 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I will start taking the snapshot. Okay, first, 1, 2, 3. That's for page 1, and then now for page 2 is 1, 2, 3, and so well. So thank you very much, and well, once again, thank you very much for all the speakers and also the participants. Really interesting presentation and really interesting Q&A discussion. We were a little bit after late, but how about that? Now it's 5:15. Let's have a 5 minutes break, and so everyone can maybe like have some water and maybe go to the washroom, etc. So let's come back at 20 minutes past 5, and in the next session, Professor Ying Ge will be the chair for this session. So okay, quickly 5 minutes break. Thank you very much.